Dlaczego? Hello and welcome to another episode of Fair 64 with me, your host, Yemmy the Ferret, aka Yemmy. Fair 64 is, of course, the one-stop shop for video game news, occurrences, first impressions, reviews, what's coming soon, and so much more. We have a nice, beefy, meaty episode for you today, so stick around. Appreciate everyone listening to the podcast so far. We are hitting our stride on both YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all those different places. If you don't mind, if you like this episode, make sure you leave it a like on YouTube. Maybe leave a comment down below if you so desire. Also, if you're on Spotify, make sure you rate it 5 stars if you so desire. And, of course, leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you don't mind. That does help out the podcast a lot. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first part of the show, which is our final review for Hellboy, the Web of Wyrd. Let's get into it. Hellboy, the Web of Wyrd is a roguelite third-person brawler that features the iconic comic book character Hellboy as he traverses the Wyrd, not weird, Wyrd. You'll come across plenty of different characters that you may recognize from the Hellboy universe. As for me personally, I'm not like super big into the Hellboy comic books. I've seen a couple of the movies back in the day, not the new one, but the older ones. So I'm not like super well versed in like who Scheherazade is or the different characters that show up. But I understand the main premise of Hellboy, which is essentially a supernatural investigator of some sorts who has a big hell fist and usually uses some sort of weapon like a shotgun or something like that. Hellboy is one of the unique characters in comic books that does not come from either Marvel or DC. They are an independent character who I believe it's published by Dark Horse Comics or IDW, something like that. Don't quote me. I like I said, I'm not like super big into Hellboy, but when I saw the trailers and whatnot for Hellboy Web of Wyrd, I definitely was intrigued. The art style alone is enough to get you interested and looking into this game with maybe a bit of a magnifying glass. And once it released just before Spider-Man 2 and Mario Wonder, I knew that I had a limited amount of time to really enjoy and dig into Hellboy before I got sucked under the waves of Spider-Man 2 and company. And you may be feeling the same way. Maybe you didn't buy Hellboy simply because there were so many other games coming out in October. Just a week after Spider-Man was Alan Wake 2. A week before Hellboy was Assassin's Creed Mirage, or maybe 2 weeks before Hellboy was Assassin's Creed Mirage. And October was just a very difficult month for indie games because of the fact that there were so many big names coming out that people were going to be more interested in. Now, because I am a video game connoisseur, any game that really catches my eye, usually I go for. And Hellboy caught my eye very early on, as I already said, so I decided to pick it up before Spider-Man came out and try to play as much as I could before that game came out. Because, as predicted, I did spend a lot of time with Spider-Man and other games that came out in October. But I did eventually get back around to Hellboy this past week, and I gotta say I'm genuinely surprised that more people aren't talking about this game. Now I know that the combat can be a bit samey throughout your playthrough. I understand that. But it's the uniqueness in the enemies that pop up as you go through the Wyrd, the areas that you travel to, the different upgrades you can get, and the different character interactions you have inside of like this house that houses the way to get to the Wyrd. That really makes this game shine. And I'm not saying that the combat is bad or boring in my opinion. I think that it's a weighty and very tactical. And if you're just wailing, if you're just slamming buttons on your controller, you're going to have a much harder time getting through the final part of the game, or maybe even the final two parts of the game. Let's start all the way back at the beginning. So Hellboy and his crew of officers, BRPD officers, I think they're called. It's been a while since I started the game. I apologize. He goes into the Wyrd to find Lucky, one of the characters that you work with in the game. And Lucky gets trapped, and you got to go save him. And that's kind of like the tutorial for the game, the prologue of the game. It kind of sets up what's going on. You meet Scheherazade, who is the writer of the Wyrd, and you become Hellboy, becomes the new protagonist in the Wyrd, as he tries to figure out what is going on to make these weird anomalies popping up around the world spike up and cause some havoc. So as you venture through your first time through the Wyrd, you're learning like, okay, things are a bit weird here. It's a lot of floating platforms with narrow bridges connecting them, and the art style in the game is amazing. Let's just start there while we're talking about it. Like the places you go to, the worlds, the views you see, the vistas and stuff like that. Like even though it's not like a overreaching like horizon, it's not like Horizon Zero Dawn or something like that where you see like this big vista of like, oh, I can go there and I can go there. When you're looking from a high place around this map, it's just a cool visual seeing these floating platforms, and there's just like a bunch of like stuff all the way in the background, and there's like these threads coming down from the sky. Most areas kind of look the same except for the final area, which is in a subway station setting. But the other ones kind of look the same, where it's a bunch of floating platforms connected by these little tunnel areas that you go through to get to the next area, which usually has either an enemy encounter, a shop, an upgrade, or a challenge room, or a boss. Eventually, there is a boss. So, I like how most of these areas look. I do wish that there was more variation, especially because like that last area with the subway is very unique compared to the other areas you go to. The three before that, like the first one's kind of like this Roman architecture kind of place. You're fighting these stone warriors with swords and shields and maces. And then the next area you go to is like this wooded area that's kind of a bit different from the first one, but still kind of like the floating platforms, but it's much more spooky, I guess, with these tangled vines and dead trees, and the enemies are like wolf-like creatures, quick hitting beasts that attack you. And then the third area is like this, supposed to be like this underwater world, but once again, it's floating platforms connected by bridges. Even though the enemies and the visuals are different, the idea is the same from the first two. And the enemies in this area are kind of like crab monsters, and there's like this mermaid type wizard who can throw smoke out and cloud your vision. And then finally, the subway station, which is the most unique out of all of them, is pretty much just an underground labyrinth where the hallways and train tracks lead you to different rooms, and the enemies in this area are much more difficult, and with these bat type enemies and vampiric type enemies who can hurt you from afar with bats and stuff like that. And each of these areas have little cannon fodder enemies who are there to just kind of be like, hey, if you punch me, I give you shield, or whatever it's called. And in the last area, those little bitch enemies, fodder enemies, I'm sorry, they become 2 hits instead of 1, so it changes things up just a little bit. But yeah, even though I like the way that all these areas look, I wish there was more areas like the subway or even like the wooded area that's a bit more unique, less of the standard than you get from the first, from the 3 areas from the start. And unfortunately, it never really gets more detailed or exciting than that, which is not wholeheartedly a bad thing. Like I said, I like the way that everything looks in the game. I would just hope for maybe a little bit more variation than what they gave us in the map designs. Of course, being a roguelite, every time you go through a map, it's going to be a little bit different. Not every room is going to be in the same place, or maybe there's going to be different upgrades here and there, or maybe you'll run into some different enemy configurations. And the main part of the game is attacking these elite enemies, the ones who are big and they're towering over the little guys. And the idea is to beat up those big guys. The little guys will just immediately go away once you beat them, which is nice. I would hate to have gone around and try to beat up every little tiny enemy that spawns. That would have been annoying. But focusing on the big elite enemies and only punching the little ones when you really have to, or maybe you want to get back some of your shield. I think it's called toughness, actually. Getting back some of your toughness, which is like a shield that protects your health and can recharge, and you can get little shards to recharge it faster. So what you want to do is you have a focus button, which is kind of like your lock-on. You hold that down to zoom in on an enemy and focus on the enemy. That way you can do bigger combos. If you're not focused on the elite, you'll just do a 1-2 punch with your regular fist, which is not going to be that great. But if you focus on the elite enemy, you can do a 4-hit combo ending with a giant hit from the Hell Fist, which does a lot of damage, also does some knockback. And the cool thing about this game is a lot of the environment is interactable. So if you slam an enemy into a wall, their posture meter will fill up, and once that's totally filled up, you can do a mega punch on them. You can also hit them with your weapons that also fills up, like your guns. So you have like a pistol to start off with that does posture damage. You have a shotgun that does loads of posture damage, but only at a close range. And then you have a grenade launcher, which just does damage all around. You also have these little charms that you get that are these special abilities you have that are like a one-time, and then it's got a recharge kind of thing. You have to reload the guns, of course, but the charms, they come back automatically. So the first one you get is this one that pushes away enemies. So every once in a while, elites will kind of be like, "Attack, minions!" They don't actually say that, but they point and they go, "Rah!" And the little minions start to crowd around you. So it's good for that. It's good for crowd control. You can push all the little guys back and then keep focusing on the big guy. The second one you get is a shield, so it can block one hit of damage on your character. So, that's very useful, especially if an enemy is charging up a big attack. And then the last one is a knife, which can pierce through the enemy's toughness and hit their health directly. It also stuns them for a second, so it can interrupt various moves that they're doing. So these elite enemies, they don't just have like regular old attacks. Like, sure, a lot of them punch and stuff like that. And you have like a dodge ability and a parry ability in your repertoire. But some of them have these like super big attacks that have like a gray circle forming around them, and they take long to charge up, and then they do devastating damage if they hit you. And the idea is to dodge these attacks. You don't want to try and parry them. Parrying will get you flattened. So it's not like Lies of P, where you have to parry the big attacks. It's more like any other Souls-like game almost, where you want to get away from the big attack and parry the smaller attacks. And as you parry smaller attacks, your fist meter will go up, and when it's fully enraged or whatever, you can unleash a devastating punching attack on the enemy that cripples them. It does not affect their toughness, but it does affect their health in large quantities. I used it mostly on the enemies who have like 10 health bars and then like 5 toughness, because they're the hardest to take down. And it does help a lot to whittle that down with the big punches, and then go in and whittle them down with your regular punches, which takes a little bit of time. But once you kind of go through the areas a couple times, you can start to understand the attack patterns of enemies and kind of predict what they're going to do sometimes. It's not 100%, of course, because there is that randomness factor of fighting an enemy, but once you see an attack coming, you'll kind of know what to do. Oh, I should parry this at this time. Oh, I should be dodging this one. And the unique thing about Hellboy is not only do you have a backstep, a sidestep, left and right, but you also have a duck. If you just press the dodge button without moving the joystick, you duck. And if you duck at the right time, or if you dodge at the right time in general, it'll open up the enemy for a punishing blow, which means that you're going to punch them in the face and they are going to take some major damage. So there's a lot of different things going on here. I think the dodging mechanic is pretty cool. Like, even though most attacks can't be dodged under, I really enjoy the animation when you duck under, and then the enemy kind of slows down, and it's like boom, and then you go uppercut, and it just hits him, hits him for mega damage. It's very cool. There's these pillars around each arena that you can smash enemies into, and eventually they'll crumble and break. And you can actually throw objects from the rubble to do some posture damage to them, which is nice. It actually, I believe it makes you a bit invulnerable when you're picking up a boulder. So let's say you're at low health and enemy's charging up a big attack. If you time it right, you might be able to slip by that attack with the invincibility frames while picking up the rocks and stuff like that. So there you go. Of course, with this being a roguelite, there's going to be roguelite elements in here. So each run you get one of like 4 or 5 different upgradable items that you can find randomly. Some of them are really useful, other ones are not so useful. So to start off, sometimes you'll get a relic that will either give you extra health or extra toughness. You have to choose between one of the two. There's usually two decisions to make per relic that you pick up. So yeah, that's one of them. The other one is enemies can either drop more money or less money, but they drop health sometimes, which is really helpful later on in the game. And so there's a whole bunch like that. And then there's ones that affect your specific weapon. So you can equip one to your fist, to your gun, or to your charm. Or was I calling it relic before? It's a charm. The knife and the shield and the pushback are charms. I apologize. So each one of these relics that you pick up will give you some sort of special thing with your different weapon. So a lot of times when I was going through myself, the fist, if I found the frost relic, I would put that on my fist because every so often an enemy will freeze in place when your fist is ready to do a freeze attack. Pretty cool. There's one that I put on my knife a lot, which was one that gave enemies double damage. The more hits you do, the more damage they take. And the reason why I put that on my knife is because it recharged. I didn't use my knife to every single encounter. I did use it every single encounter, but I only used it when I really needed to, when the enemy was about to do like an attack or something like that. So I got used to putting it on my knife because when you do that, the enemy staggers back and you can wail on them. It was a pretty good combo. And then usually on the gun, I would put a different one of the miscellaneous ones that I didn't really care for. There's like I said, there's like 5 or so that you can pick up and put on a weapon. Some of them give you better environmental damage, so when you're pushing enemies into walls, it'll increase the damage. There's another one that oh man, I'm blanking on it now because I haven't used them in a while. I've been mostly using, when I see the frost one and I see the extra damage one, I always go for those because the more you find, you can level up them to like level 3 or 4 or something like that. Maybe 3. That's the highest level for those. And yeah, it just does better in general. So yeah, it's one of those things that, mess around with it, see what suits you. I know that they're all useful, don't get me wrong, but there were 2 that I found extremely useful throughout my time with the game. And as I mentioned before, there is money pickups in the game, which you use at the stores inside of the levels. You can't use them outside of levels. The money is only for inside the level. So each item you can either buy relics or extra health or something like that. There's also little offering sites you can go to, which will give you an extra relic if you offer money to them. Some of them you have to do a challenge to get, so you have to beat a bunch of enemies in a row, and sometimes even like a mini boss. So there's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff. And then there's also these little orbs that you pick up each encounter and also throughout the world that you can use to upgrade stuff outside of the Wyrd, which are permanent upgrades. So the money upgrades you buy inside the levels don't stick, but the permanent upgrades outside that you use the orbs for do stick. So you can increase your health, increase your toughness, increase your gun damage, increase your charm damage. There's a whole bunch of different things that happen, of course, when you upgrade them. So the more times going through the Wyrd, the more money you're going to get, obviously, and the more upgrades you'll be able to acquire. And by the time that I was at the last part of the game, I had really upgraded my health and toughness almost all the way. I had gotten enough orbs to do that, and then I realized, oh shit, I could have been upgrading my weapons this whole time. So I quickly went into the word a couple times to get some orbs to upgrade like my pistol and the knife, because those are the two things I was using the most. Mainly the pistol, because of the fact that it does so much posture damage at so far away. It makes it easy to go in there, do a heavy hit, and stun them for a second to do another heavy hit. Pretty useful. Of course, everything in the game is pretty useful, but it's more useful than, in my opinion, than other things. So yeah, I mean, throughout the story, I mean, if you don't want spoilers, obviously click off at this part, if you want to. But obviously, throughout the exploits of Hellboy in the Words, you uncover that the Nazis are still alive in the Words. Some of them were doing an experiment back in the 40s, and they got trapped into the Word, and they've been writing their own story, upgrading themselves, creating kind of like a bit of a civilization, I guess you could say. And because of that, there are these super Nazi enemies inside the Word, who have like these big attacks, and they have big health bars, and they're the toughest enemies in the game. And actually, as you go through the Word even farther, after this happens, the third part of a level after the boss fight, um, there will be these enemies who have upgrades on them placed by the Nazis to give them more damage and stuff like that. So it definitely gets more difficult as you go on. Because usually when you go into a word level, it's 2 floors. You beat the boss at the end of the 2nd floor. You move on. But once the Nazis get introduced, that's when the 3rd floor starts showing up, and that's the floor with the Nazi installations and all the different weaponry and characters that you'll meet for the Nazis. And of course, now the task becomes, expelling the Nazis from the Word, or beating them down enough to get them to stop doing stuff in the real world. Obviously, and you meet the big bad Nazi who's telling them what to do and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good story. I enjoyed it a lot. The ending of the game, I was really starting to sweat, because once you get through and once you get through several parts of this game, the final part is going through the final level of each level in a row without stopping. And that does include a final boss fight with the head honcho as well. So I was sweating by the end of this one, and I thought I was going to get stuck for quite some time. But just like with any Souls-like game or roguelike game, I took a break, went to sleep that night, woke up in the morning, went to work, came back home, and while someone was streaming, probably Callus, or whoever, I just knocked it out. Maybe I was watching football that day. Yeah, either way, I knocked it out, and I was very satisfied. There's not many roguelike games that I feel satisfied after beating. Hellboy is definitely one of them. I felt very satisfied getting to the end and punching out the doing the last thing with the boss fight. I was living on 1 HP and a prayer. Of course, there are upgrades that you can get where you can survive a final hit and get a little bit of health back to try and knock it out. And that I got so low in health, but I didn't actually have to use that in my final confrontation. So that was nice. But it was still a very sweaty match between the final boss and me, and it was just a very satisfying ending. Like I said, the combat is so weighty and tactical that you really get into a rhythm sometimes, and you just kind of the controller kind of just floats in front of you, and your mind is controlling it telepathically almost, and that's kind of how I felt at the end of Hellboy, fighting that final boss. Like I was watching myself play. It was an out of body experience, and when I finally hit the final blow, I zapped back into reality, and yeah, it was there goes gravity, and I was like, yes, this was great. So if you don't like roguelites, there are things that can help you in this game. There's a health booster. There's an enemy aggressiveness decreaser. There's a lock-on mechanic that allows you just to click it on and off if you want to. And there's also one other boost as well in the game. I don't remember what it was called, but essentially it stops enemies from attacking as quickly as they do normally. So there are some things to help you if you need that sort of thing for this game. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a roguelite still, so it does have some punishing moments, especially later in the game. And sometimes a run, you'll just not find the things that you want, want, or the things that you need for your character to level them up and get them to where you want them to be, which is just something that happens in roguelike games in general. There's really nothing you can do about it. But when everything hits just right, it's like that Pacha meme from Emperor's New Groove. You get the it's just right kind of feeling, and that's usually when you go all the way to the end and get through it. And not only, I mean, a lot of roguelites do have good stories as well, but this one also has a very good story attached to it. The voice acting is amazing. Lance Reddick, this is one of his last performances. It may be his last performance. I was under the impression that the Horizon Forbidden West DLC, Burning Shores, was his last voice work. But apparently he was cooking up the Hellboy Web of Wyrd, and that was a big surprise to me. Like, I found out when the credits were rolling that he played Hellboy, and I was like, oh shit, no wonder I thought his voice acting was excellent. Like, everyone in the game does a generally good job at what they're given, voice acting wise. But Hellboy was like above and beyond. I love the different things he added to his voice to kind of make it so he was he was kind of nonchalant, but he was also kind of aggressive at times. And yeah, it was just a very, very good performance. So, rest in peace to Lance Reddick, one of the greats. Definitely shines in this game, which is possibly, I believe, his last work, voice acting at least. So kind of bittersweet, but also cool, very cool that I mean, he's going to live on through different mediums, of course, but yeah, this was a good send out. I thought that he did a really great job with Hellboy, and yeah, it was just an excellent game. I really enjoyed my time with it. Really, the only negative I have was the fact that, like, the levels, the first 3 levels out of the 4 were just a little bit too samey. The samey as in, like, the visual flair of, like, oh, it's a floating platform and you go to that other platform essentially. But other than that, it was all the rest of the game was great. I mean, I know there will be people who are like, but the combat's it's so one note. You just you're fighting blah 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 blah. It's like, maybe get through the game a little bit longer, or farther. Maybe try and understand the ins and outs of the fighting before saying whatever you're gonna say, because I was kind of at the beginning was like, oh wow, this is pretty basic, punch 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 punch, but it quickly devolved, as I got farther to the game and met harder foes. It quickly turned into, okay, punch punch, I have an opening here, dodge, block, parry, going for the hit, heavy fist, slam against the wall, you do the extra heavy fist because he's stunned, pull out the gun, get the other guy's posture down before going up to him, knife him. It's one of those things that I really liked the gameplay loop and the combat in general. So that's just my opinion. Of course, everyone else can have their own opinions if they so desire. But yeah, all in all, very enjoyable, from the graphics all the way down to the story and the combat and the voice acting and stuff like that. I thought that everything really worked well in the game. And that's why Hellboy Web of Wyrd, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Thank you for listening to the final review. Appreciate you. If you want to leave a like on the video, I would appreciate that. And make sure you comment down below if you so desire. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the show, which is what have I been playing this past week. All right, first up on my list of games that I've been playing this past week is Robocop Rogue City. This has been a long time coming. Was kind of concerned about this game early on when they didn't really show too much gameplay. People, including myself, thought that it was going to be another on-rails shooter, kind of like the Rambo game that came from the same studio. But the thing about a redemption arc that I love is starting from somewhere, getting thrown about, getting some poor reviews, and then making a banger in the future. And that is what this company did. Robocop Rogue City is everything that you kind of want from a Robocop game. It's got the police work. It's got the zingers. It's got the fun lines. It's got the cheesy acting, and it's got the amazing gunplay. And that's it. It all delivers inside of Robocop. Now, I'm not going to say this is the perfect game. Obviously, it is made by an indie developer, so you got to cut it some slack. I mean, this is a huge game. It's an impressive scale for this developer. I mean, the last game they made was that Terminator game, Salvation or whatever it was called, Resistance, Terminator Resistance, and that was pretty good. It was a bit glitchy and whatever, but it was pretty good when we played it. So much so that I had some faith in what project they were going to do next, and of course, Robocop, Rogue City is that next project, and I gotta say, like, they definitely hit it out of the park with this game. The gunplay itself is very satisfying. You do feel, I mean, I know this is kind of like a trope, but you do feel like RoboCop in this game. You can take a bunch of shots, and of course, you don't have infinite health like he does in the movie, but you know, you can take tons of shots, and you can really take your time to aim at the head of an enemy and blast it off, or blast an arm off, or shoot them in the dick and balls, or shoot a leg off. It's very gory. It's very violent. Pretty much all the environments in the game are destructible. So if you shoot it, or something explodes near a wall or something like that, it'll shatter and break down. You can pick up a lot of objects in the world, like motorcycles, computers, desks, chairs, and throw them at enemies and kill them with throwable objects. And on top of it all, if you aim with your gun, you can. There's like this little tracer that comes on the screen and outlines the characters in your HUD until you until they die, pretty much. Which happens in the movie as well. He can target the enemies and make sure he can track them. So that part of the game, solid. And there's also another aspect of the game where you're trying to find contraband and illegal items and stolen items, and actually picking up these items will give you XP, which is also a pretty cool thing as well. And of course, there's a skill tree where you unlock different things for your character, like extra damage, faster reload time, better detective skills and engineering skills and stuff like that. So it's a very, very good skill tree right there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about this is they got the original actor who played RoboCop to voice the character, and it sounds great. Not every voice acting role is great in this game. There's a lot of like side characters and not bosses, I'm sorry, enemies that either sound the same as the guy right next to them, or it's just very cheesy or whatever. I mean, I understand that the RoboCop movies are also super cheese worthy, right? But in the context of that film and in this video game, I don't mind it too much, but it does get a bit annoying in RoboCop the game, seeing as you run into the same like annoying high pitched screechy thug like every single combat encounter, every single like enemy. It has like this very annoying sounding voice. And the opening cutscene doesn't do it any justice because the main evil guy, Soot, who you're trying to find, has the same voice actor as the guy next to him, who gives a few lines during his brief introduction. So the game doesn't present itself too well in the first like couple of minutes of like the first cutscene. But once you start playing, you understand why the game is getting such a good reception. Not only is the gunplay satisfying, but the detective stuff is also pretty cool as well. You can go to different locations in Detroit, and you can, scan items in an area and uncover what's going on. Kind of a more basic version of what Alan Wake 2 does, but it's still pretty effective. And you can talk to different characters, interrogate them if you want to, solve various mysteries around the different areas in Detroit. And they actually did a really good job of the atmosphere of this futuristic Detroit. And it's one of those things that, like, you just kind of like stand in a alleyway or in the middle of the street, and it just reeks of ambiance. It's just a very heavy atmosphere to this game. They definitely did a great job with the setting and how everything looks and fits together. It's very cool. It's very cool. The one thing that I miss in this game is any music at all during the time when you're walking around the city. there's hardly any ambient noises or anything like that. It's all just kind of like your footsteps and maybe a dog barking in the background or a bird chirping or something like that, or the mumblings of someone you're walking by. But there's like no ambient music or stuff like that that is on a loop. That I would find that I would find the game a little bit better if they did that, because as it stands, when you're walking around an area and it's just the thunk of your footsteps, it's kind of weird, you know. With RoboCop being RoboCop, obviously he can't run, but he can walk fast. And sometimes you have a bit of a walk to get to your next side mission or next main mission. And it would be nice just to have a little bit of music playing, a little bit of that killer soundtrack from the main menu seeping into the main game or something. Um, so yeah, I think that it hits the mark on a lot of things, but it also misses the mark on some of those areas that I feel like would just improve the experience. Like the game is good as it stands, but having those small details like some music playing in the open world, or having some more ambient noises, or even being able to kind of do just I'm trying to think of the right words to say, but just there's some little things that could be improved upon that I feel like would really elevate this game higher than Terminator Resistance. But as it stands, it's kind of on the same level almost, and maybe a little bit better as it stands right now. And it's not like I'm dogging on RoboCop or Terminator. Both the games are very good in their own right. Rogue City does nudge out Terminator though, because it hasn't been as glitchy. And it hasn't been as cringy in the story terms. Terminator Resistance was pretty cringe sometimes. But yeah, I also like some of the voice acting is just a little flat. I mean, I understand having that cheese factor from the original RoboCop movie, but even after rewatching the original RoboCop movie, how many years ago at this point, I don't remember it being overly abundant or overly cheesy. It just had that that '80s cheese that you kind of come to expect. And this game, just there's so many characters who either, like I said, sound the same or have like a really poorly voiced lines. It just, it's just like one of those things. Like, maybe we could have hired some better people for this. But once again, I understand it's an indie developer; they can't do everything perfectly. Obviously, I mean they could, but they with a smaller budget, smaller staff, stuff like that. You kind of expect them to do the best they can, and the best that they can is still really good, but there's just some things I would like to touched up in the game. I hope that didn't sound too overly negative, because in the end the game is an excellent first person shooter. um, with it being such a busy month in gaming, even into the first week of November or second week of November with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 coming around, it might be lost in the shuffle. But yeah, I mean, I would give it a thumbs up right now. I've only gotten through like the first night. I guess maybe there's multiple maps or places, but I got through Detroit City Night, and I'm moving on to the next part of the game, as of right now. And so far, it's really got me enthralled. I'm really enjoying my time with it. There's a lot of fun little side things to do. One of them is as simple as just putting a ticket on a car that's parked in front of a fire hydrant. And once again, like RoboCop himself, very good voice acting. I love all the little lines that they give him to say. It's very RoboCop-esque. And yeah, it's a good time, and it's on the cheaper side on Steam, at least at about $50. On PlayStation, it's like 60 for some reason. I don't know why, but I ended up getting it on PC. It runs just fine, looks great. I'm sure the PS5 version is good, maybe a bit more glitchy. It seems like from the little snippets of reviews I've been seeing, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. A thumbs up for me. I'll talk about it more probably when I finish it up. Speaking of games that I need to finish up, Alan Wake 2. I've been getting through this game, and I gotta say, like, it's really, really impressive. I talked about it a good amount last week, but I have made a lot more progress in the game now. I've gotten to after the part where you can switch between Alan Wake and Saga, which is not a spoiler. It was in the build up trailers to the the game launch. And yeah, I mean the differences between the two characters is there's a good amount of differences. Saga, she goes into her mind palace and she can put together clues, and she can, um, you know, find out things about cases and whatever. She can profile people and get the truth out of them. And Alan Wake, he's unique because he can go into his own mind palace, and he can change the plot of the game essentially. So there's certain places that you go to, and you'll have plot points that they can use to change how an area looks. So one of the first ones that you do is down this alleyway. There's nothing there at the start, but he goes, "Oh, what if I use the idea of the detective on the case?" So you go into your mind palace and you put the detectives following a case on the picture of the area, and it changes. He types it out, and it changes to be a little bit different. And there's now an FBI agent who meets you, and they die, and that's kind of where it starts going from there. So it's pretty cool. You can change around these scenes a lot with the different plot points that you get, which unlocks new routes. You can find like extra ammo and stuff like that around corners that maybe were blocked before. And unlike the first game, a lot of the enemies in Alan Wake's version of the Dark Place they are like these little shadow guys that you can shine the flashlight at and take them out in one go. And there's also the like more powerful enemies who also pop up as well, but they're mixed in with like the shadow guys. So you gotta be careful. You gotta really pay attention to who's acting more like an actual enemy and who's just kind of like a ghostly figure that might push you around every so often. And both characters get upgrades. So Saga finds like these torn up pages of the manuscript that she uses to upgrade her weapons, and Alan Wake, he finds like these writings that a past self did, and you shine your flashlight at them, and it gives you like extra. There's multiple things you can upgrade, so it just gives you an upgrade essentially. So it's pretty cool. And the Alan Wake sections of the game, I wouldn't say they're scarier than Saga's, but they're up there. I mean, I think that the whole thing of Saga going through like this decrepit, decaying forest is much more scary than Alan Wake going through a decrepit subway station or whatever. But both of them have their own scary sections. I just did the section where you go through like an amusement park that's kind of been run down, but it's still operating for whatever reason. And that was, I mean, it wasn't super intense, but it was just a really cool atmosphere. I think the one thing that this game gets right 100% of the time, nail on the head, is the atmosphere. Whether it's the opening section where you're walking through Bleak Falls trying to find the sheriff's department, or trying to find the murder scene at the beginning of the game at Cauldron Lake, and you're kind of going through the forest, and there's kind of like creepy noises happening, but it's still light out, so you kind of feel safe, all the way to the sections with Alan Wake where you're in New York and there's just no one around, and there's these shadowy figures following around. Like, the atmosphere is so thick and dense, and it does a great job at doing that. And there's like a bunch of little things you can find littered around the place. As I already mentioned with Saga, she can find these little torn pieces of manuscript that upgrades her weapons, but then again, she can also find these different collectible charms she can put in her bracelet to improve her character. There's also plenty of ammo stashes to find, and these like little cult boxes that you can open that have stashes of ammo and batteries, and sometimes even new weapons inside of them, like the crossbow that I got recently, which is actually pretty good. So yeah, and the other thing that's new about this game that was different, I believe, in the Alan Wake games of old, is that once you shine your light on an enemy and use the burst on them, it shows a weak point on them. There's this little red glowing weak point, and if you shoot that, it'll do a massive amount of damage, which can help in boss fights and just going against regular enemies. So yeah, that's one of the cool things. Lots of new enemy types as well in the game so far. Like, there's these guys who throw axes at you who are really fast. There's these wolves who don't need to have light shined on them, but they sneak around in the dark and they can attack from any direction. And yeah, there's just the gore is really good in this game. They did a great job of like modeling the characters with the gore system. Not as good as Dead Island 2 per se, but still pretty good. And I mean, yeah, I mean, unlike Robocop, this game has great ambiance to it. Like the sounds of the forest, and like there's like a creaking Ferris wheel in the part that I was just talking about with the amusement park that is consistent throughout the entire like area. It's just a very creepy atmosphere. Very good job with the sound editing and with the voice acting. It's all very good, very well done. So. If you want to check it out, Alan Wake 2 is definitely 2 thumbs up for me at this point. Still working through it, of course. There's some days where I feel like I want to play Alan Wake, and then when I sit down to like get ready to play, I'm like, I don't feel like playing video games right now. I've been kind of going through that a little bit, and maybe it's because I've been finishing so many games like one after the others right now. So maybe I'm getting a bit of burnout. But once I pick up the controller and start actually playing, I'm into it. I'm in for the long run. Unfortunately, though, Ghost Runner 2, I had to refund the game. And you might be saying, what? Yeah, I had to refund the game. It just was not vibing with me. The first Ghost Runner is just so fun, action-packed, sci-fi, cyberpunk. One-hit kill on the enemy. Enemies can one-hit kill you. And almost immediately with the first boss fight of Ghost Runner 2, they throw that out the window. Instead of being like a gauntlet or a challenge to get to the boss to get a hit on them and then, go through a process again, but maybe a little bit different. The boss now has a health bar, and you gotta just keep slashing and hacking away at them and dodging their attacks. And I'm just not a fan of the way that they changed it. I would much rather have had the same thing where the bosses take a hit, you get pushed back or whatever. You got to go through another gauntlet to get to them again. That was way more fun than what they did in this game with the boss fights. And even though the gameplay is relatively the same, it's still pretty fun. I just knew that every time I got to a boss fight, I would find myself being super disappointed. And I just was like, you know what? I'm still within the time limit of getting a refund. I don't think I'm going to play this game anymore at this point because of the sourness in my mouth from this boss fight that is just feels like any other boss fight in any other video game. In Ghost Runners 1, those boss fights are so unique because it's like, oh, you hit them 3 times. Oh, you hit them 3 times, but getting to them in those 3 times is the real challenge. And I was really hoping for something like that again, but on a grander scale. And they fumbled it in my opinion, and I had to get that refund. Sorry, folks. Also, recently played Headbangers this past week, which is Headbangers Rhythm Royale is what the game's called. It's on Xbox Game Pass if you want to try it out. This is the rhythm-based battle royale game where you play as one of 30 pigeons, and you try and be the best there ever was. And you do a bunch of different rhythm and memory-based challenges to eventually win it. They start out pretty easy with just following the leader or copycatting what another character is doing. Then they get much more difficult with the Simon Says memory games and stuff like that. So in general, I had fun with the game, but it was really annoying. It was actually a really annoying kind of game. The sounds of the pigeons were just really annoying. And I found myself getting the same mini games over and over again, and I really started to feel like Fall Guys for a second because I did like 3 tournaments they're called, and of those 3 tournaments, I had the same level 2 out of 4 maps, and I was like, that's annoying. So in the end, I got a win in a tournament, and I said that's enough for me. And I put the game down, and I didn't uninstall it from my computer yet, but I was close. I'm just like, I don't know. I like after the travesty of Fall Guys and how it fell from grace, I start to see these little things that Fall Guys did in other games, and I immediately just kind of get turned off a little bit. Especially because the first thing that you do when you boot up Headbangers is see the battle pass or whatever it is, the season pass. And yeah, even though there's no like in-game currency, I guess there is in-game currency to buy costumes, but some of the costumes you just complete challenges for, which is fine. But yeah, it's one of those games that I don't think I'm ever gonna really go back to, and if I do, it'd be because a friend wants to play with me. So Headbangers. Like a 3 out of 5. Not my favorite thing ever, but not bad. And yeah, there you go. All right, let's quickly touch on some games we finished on stream. Days Gone. Much more positive on the game now after replaying it. It doesn't justify any of the things that the director said recently about the game being treated unfairly or being better than what it was reviewed and blah blah blah. I still think that most of the 7 out of 10 reviews are solid. I only raised my review score about a half a point. It was a 3.5. Now it's a 4 out of 5. And that's because this time around I felt like the characters and story meshed better than when I originally played it. And that might just be me growing up and understanding character interactions and character building more. But yeah, it definitely kept me more interested story wise than did the first time. Even though I knew all the story beats, it was still fun going back through it. I do think that by the time Act 3 comes around and you go to the military base, it kind of it lost me again a little bit with this new big area and whatever. But it's still a pretty good time. It's still a pretty good open world game. The motorcycle aspect is pretty unique for a video game where you're going around on a motorcycle, much better than Homefront: The Revolution and its motorcycle. And yeah, I mean, in general, I just had a better experience with it overall, which it's hard to explain why. But maybe it's because I was streaming it and I was interacting with chat and having having some distraction. Because when you play the game normally, it's a lot of just driving from point A to point B and doing that again and again and again, right? And of course, you can get fast travel unlocked, and as you upgrade your vehicle, you can travel farther and stuff like that, which does help. So I don't know if I'm gonna go back and try and do 100% again. Like I did that the first time. I did 100% of a lot of different things, and I was like, yeah, I wasn't really too super satisfying to do that, especially burning out all the nests in the game, which are cool which is a cool concept on paper, but having to try and find them around the map, especially when the crow nests are so small. It's just one of those things like I don't know. Maybe if I had more time on stream and October didn't lead into November as quickly as it did, in my opinion, maybe we would go for more of the 100% stuff on stream. But nah, I'm good. And yeah, it all worked out. We finished up the game the day before, on Halloween, the day before November started, because November is Bunger month, if you don't know, and Bunger month is a time when people in my Discord can pick a game for the month for us to play, and they can pick any game from my backlog, and people choose whatever game they want, and I usually get to most, if not all of them in the month, and if it does spill over into December, it's not the end of the world. But as long as I get through everyone's first initial suggestions, then I'll probably call it then and whatever. But yeah, if you want to, you can join the Discord right now. Link in the description of YouTube videos, and I'll probably be adding those to the Spotify and Apple Podcasts too. But and you can actually suggest a game for my backlog if you so desire, and whatever. So yeah, Days Gone, it's fine. It's a 4 out of 5 at this point. I think it's good. And I think it's worth playing, especially because they've given it away for free so many times. It's on GOG now, along with some other PlayStation games like God of War 2018 and stuff like that. So you can also get it there if you don't like Epic Game Store or Steam. So yeah, it's like I said, it's worth playing through. It was fun enough. And there you go. So to start off November, aka Bunger month, we played Emperor's New Groove on the PS1. Relatively good game. Like, I was surprised. I was very satisfied with the platforming. I thought the game had some pretty good levels in there. The final batch of levels were pretty good. There's these sections where you are riding on the roller coaster that's in the movie, and that's actually pretty cool. Really fun sections. Just in general, a good time. A 3.5 out of 5. It still has some of that PS1 jank and whatever, and it does deter from the movie quite a lot, with scenes being out of order for whatever reason. But in the end, highly enjoyable, good time, worth a playthrough if you have a PS1. And after that, we played Small Soldiers, which was the opposite of Emperor's New Groove. This is a PS1 game, a third-person shooter with tank controls. And the story mode in the game, you go through like these different levels trying to find keys and defeat like the small soldiers, essentially. You defeat the enemies. But the enemies are so aggressive and the controls are so terrible that I just couldn't do it. So we used the cheat to get to the last level. We beat the last level, and then I said, okay, let's move on. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't as good as I was hoping it was going to be, but a little blast of nostalgia. I mean, this is one of those games that I saw on the Small Soldiers DVD, and I was like, oh, I hope that's on N64, and it wasn't, or I don't think it was. So I never got to play it. But I'm happy that I didn't play it because the game was pretty bad. I mean, it wasn't terrible. Like, it's not F tier in my opinion, but it's still pretty bad, pretty bad. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I've been playing this past week. Let's go ahead and move on to what's in the news. Okay, first up, Bungie has laid off about 100 people from its staff. They said that the revenue that Destiny 2 is pulling in is about 45% lower than the 2023 projection that they had. This, of course, is just one of the many rounds of layoffs that companies have been doing recently who develop games. Last week I talked about a bunch of them. Don't need to reiterate those. But yeah, this past week, Bungie laid off about 8% of its studio, which is kind of crazy. 100 people. I mean, that's 100 people losing their jobs. Not a good thing. Bloomberg reported that the Bungie employees had been told 2 weeks ago that Destiny 2 was running about 45% below revenue projections. And then the following week, they were told that there was a 15-minute meeting scheduled on Monday morning where they learned that those, the people were getting laid off, and those people were the 100 people getting laid off. So it must have been a pretty hard time. At least they still get their severance package, 3 months severance, and Bungie Cobra health insurance for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, though, any other benefits that they had from working there were only going to last until the end of the month, and that includes shares in revenue that they would be getting if they were at the company longer. But unfortunately, if you leave the company or if you're fired, including being laid off, it means that you don't get those shares in the company anymore, which is kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. They don't even get the chance to get that far. Of course, the recent expansion called Lightfall, I heard that it was reviewed pretty poorly. People did not like the expansion. I watched a video by I Hate Everything, aka IHE, and he goes into detail why the Lightfall expansion is not that great. And I haven't played Destiny 2 since vanilla version or since the first DLC pack came out. So I really can't say, but it seems like the Lightfall expansion was pretty poorly received. And this round of layoffs has been so upsetting to people around the Destiny 2 fan base that they are boycotting the next DLC, which is the Final Shape, which has been delayed until February 2024. I'm sorry, from February 2024 to sometime in June. And people are so upset that the game is that they're delaying the Final Shape, and they laid off those people, which probably meant that they needed to delay the Final Shape. That they're demanding refunds from PlayStation and from, of course, Bungie. We'll see if they get those, but yeah. And also in the same batch of news, the game Marathon, which was recently shown off at a State of Play, a little teaser trailer, which was initially going to be released in 2025. I'm sorry, it didn't have a release date, but now it's been pushed back to 2025 or farther. That's apparently been pushed back not only probably because of the layoffs, but also because a group of people who play that Tarkov game, Escape from Tarkov, were chosen. About 100 or so people were chosen to try out Marathon, and in this gaming session, people said that they did not like the game. They would not play Marathon. So I think they're going back to the design board. Now, this is even funnier after the fact that the Bungie head, the CEO of Bungie, went to the studio that was working on the Last of Us live service game and said that live service game was not good enough. It was not going to be a long-lasting live service game. But here we have Marathon, a game that's been being worked on for many, many years. People try it out and they go, no, I would not play this game. So it's just kind of ironic, kind of funny that the same guy who worked on Destiny 2, and it's got 45% less revenue from last year, and he's the head of Marathon, and they have to push that back to 2025 and retool some of the game to make people want to play it. He told the people behind the Last of Us multiplayer game that it wasn't good enough. I don't know if I would use his judgment. It's still reported that people are still working on the Last of Us multiplayer game, but right now it seems to be just a skeleton crew. Of course, it's a different studio inside of Sony, but still, the point stands. And once again, maybe I didn't say this, Bungie was the ones who laid off the people inside the studio. Sony actually had no involvement in the layoffs of the people inside of Bungie. So that was I believe that was in the initial contract when Sony Entertainment bought Bungie, was that Bungie would still be its own entity, being able to do its own thing, and Sony would just publish the games for them. So yeah, you can't really blame Sony for this one, seeing as they didn't have any say in the matter for what was going on. So yeah, it's just it's a weird thing going on right now. Lots of layoffs happening inside of the video game industry, which just calls for more reason for people for people inside of the development studios to unionize. Because right now there's no video game developer union. There's a union for actors, and there's a union for coal miners and train workers and blah 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 blah, any other job that you can think of. But one of the biggest industries in the world does not have the backbone of a union, at least in America. Yeah, not great. I think forming a union would be good as of right now for the many game developers out there. All right, let's move on. Nintendo recently filed a new patent for a dual screen detachable device. This patent, which of course we saw a patent kind of similar to this back when the Switch was originally going to be announced, which showed the screen on the controller, right, and it could dock in and out of the console. This one looks very closely related to a Nintendo DS, except it looks a lot bigger. And apparently the screens are detachable, so that would be kind of interesting to detach the screen in order to maybe slide it into a dock. Maybe you could use the dock that the Switch already plugs into for this new Switch device. That would be kind of interesting. Yeah, so on October 26th, this past week, there was a filing sent by Nintendo about a dual screen detachable device of some kind. In a statement, in the concept design, there is a description. It says, this electronic apparatus comprises a first device and second device. The first device and the second device can be detachably attached to each other. The first device has the first surface and a first display and a first connection unit, which are positioned on the first surface. The second device has a second surface, a second display that is positioned on the second surface, a second rear surface that is on the reverse side from the second surface, and a second connection unit that is positioned on the second rear surface. Okay, let's break this down a little bit. So it's a clamshell type design. It seems like instead of closing the device, you would just detach the top device. And the top device does have a screen on it, so not really sure what that would be for. Maybe some sort of gameplay gimmick or something like that. I'm not sure. I mean, Nintendo has always pushed the boundaries of what gaming is. Whether it's, the Wii with its motion controls or the Switch with its hybrid portability, they've always been pushing things forward in video gaming, and a lot of companies they follow them. Obviously, not as many companies followed them into the handheld market. Obviously, there are some things popping up now, like the Sony Portal, whatever it's called, device. Xbox is partnering with other studios to make an Xbox-like Switch device. Of course, there's a bunch of things like the ANEO and stuff like that that are popping up, the Steam Deck. But it took time. It took time this time around for people to really see, or maybe companies to see how lucrative the Switch was. It's a pretty interesting patent. Now, obviously, this could just be like, hey, we're thinking about this. We might not do it, of course. But hey, if the Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be called is really that far in development, We might be closer than we might know or think. Yeah, I think the whole like 3 screens on this thing is a bit much. I don't think this is gonna. I think this is just a like concept thing that they want to patent just in case. But I don't think that the third screen is gonna be something that they're gonna do. But hey, you never know. You never freaking know. All right, Elden Ring. The DLC for Elden Ring, quote unquote, is progressing smoothly. Talking to Kadokawa Corporation, who owns From Software, it's a parent company of some From Software. They said, "We are currently working hard on the development of DLC for Elden Ring, but we have not announced a release date at this time." They also stated that the development is proceeding smoothly. So we know very little about the expansion right now. We don't know when it's going to arrive yet or what it's going to offer, but we do know it's probably going to be a pretty sizable DLC. I mean, there's a part on the Elden Ring map that you cannot get to, and people are suspecting that that is the place that the DLC is going to take place, or possibly the area that you are in that you can't do anything in is where you're going to be transported to the new area. It's hard to say at this point because there's not much known, but it's nice to know that they are working on it very hard, I'm sure. And I'm guessing they're gonna try and finish up this DLC before moving on to a new game, possibly. Maybe they're gonna support Elden Ring for many years to come. We'll have to wait and see. Sony has acquired the company iSize. This is not a video game developer. This is a studio which specializes in deep learning for video delivery. In a blurb, they say iSize builds AI-powered solutions to deliver bitrate savings and quality improvements for the media and entertainment industry. There has been no buyout price yet due to some contractual commitments, but the acquisition is designed to provide Sony with a significant expertise in applying machine learning to video processing, which will benefit a large range of R&D efforts as well as our video and streaming services. If you don't know, PlayStation Plus Premium gets streamable PS3 games, and now they've recently introduced that you can stream PS5 games, especially from this new portable device that they have, well, semi-portable device. So this is probably going to help with their cloud gaming. They're going to use this company to help with the cloud gaming, is my opinion, is what I'm thinking here. In a blog post by Sony, they said, founded in 2016 and based in London, iSize has a team of talented engineers and technical experts who have developed a suite of software solutions to optimize video. For example, the company built an AI-based perceptual pre-processing. Oh my god. A AI-based perceptual pre-processing solution that allows conventional third-party encoders to produce higher quality video at a significantly lower bitrate. So, yeah, essentially exactly what you think it is. It seems to be just, maybe not just for, but it seems to be very much tied to the cloud-based stuff that they are going to be working on, or maybe trying to catch up to speed with Xbox. Speaking of Xbox, though, Xbox is now putting a new policy in place to block unauthorized accessibilities. Now, Microsoft has issued a statement since then. They've confirmed that connections via USB and 3.5mm ports on the Xbox Adaptive Controller will not be affected by the new policy, but third-party devices designed for accessibility should also work as well through that device. Now, there's a lot of people with disabilities, or maybe just controllers that they find useful. Maybe they love a certain controller type that may possibly see a problem with this if their controllers are not officially licensed. Not officially licensed, or don't have the right connection, or they don't have the accessibility adaptive controller. Yeah, they might see some problems. I mean, in the original press release, a spokesperson said on Windows Central, whatever that is, Microsoft and other licensed Xbox hardware partners' accessories are designed and manufactured with quality standards for performance, security, and safety. Unauthorized accessories can compromise the gaming experience on Xbox consoles. Players may receive a pop-up warning that their accessory is unauthorized. Eventually, the unauthorized accessory will be blocked from use to preserve the console gaming experience. For a full list of accessories that are supported on Xbox consoles, please visit www.xbox.com/accessories, which, I mean, looking at the list of accessories that are allowed, I mean, there's definitely a lot here, but it's all Microsoft owned or Microsoft approved. Like it has like the official Microsoft logo and Xbox logo on it and stuff like that. So, let's say someone is using an accessibility controller that is not a Microsoft one, and they've been using it for years on their Xbox One or their Series X or S. Eventually, it might stop working, which is kind of crazy. This will come into effect on the 12th of November. Already, there's a few companies that came out and said, "Hey, we're not going to be affected." Like Scuff, they came out and said, "Hey, this is not going to affect our stuff. We are officially licensed by Xbox." So, I guess as long as something is officially Xbox licensed, it's going to work on the console. But I know that there are a lot of people who will be getting this error and blocking of their controllers because not every controller is going to not everyone can afford the most pricey controller out there, or not many. Not there's different controllers for people with different types of disabilities. The Xbox accessible controller is not going to be the best fit for everyone. So yeah, I guess we'll wait and see what happens. But as of right now, they're planning on moving this forward on the 12th of November. Atari has officially bought Digital Eclipse. Digital Eclipse is the same company that put together the Atari 50 Anniversary Collection, along with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection, Disney Classics Game Collection, and most recently the making of Karateka. So they have been acclaimed for their software that specializes in retro game preservation and allowing these retro games to work on modern hardware. This is actually probably going to be a good decision by Atari. I mean, Atari isn't the most profitable gaming outlet out there anymore, but this is pretty noteworthy. They're probably going to be putting out a bunch of Atari games. I know there's still supposedly some sort of Atari console in the works, so maybe they'll be porting games to their new Atari console. I don't know. That thing's been rumored for many, many years at this point. In a questions and answers post, they said that Digital Eclipse will not only be working on just Atari games, they will still be able to work on other games outside of the Atari catalog. They were quoted as saying, "While we certainly are happy to have a greater access to Atari's library, we still have the freedom to seek out projects with other parties." It also adds that Digital Eclipse has a lot of unannounced projects right now in the works that do not involve Atari's IPs, and those will carry out as planned. So it's nice to know that they are still going to be working on things outside of Atari, but it seems like they're going to be outputting some Atari stuff in the near future. Okay, a game called The Finals, which is a multiplayer shooter that's not been released yet, but I believe that there was maybe like a beta or something that was put out. Yeah, there was an open beta weekend. I'm sorry. Yeah, there was an open beta weekend. Some people playing the game noticed that the in-game voices were a little bit weird. And I think I might. Well, you can find the video online, but essentially the voices are AI generated. They're AI generated voices, and it's very obvious that they are AI generated voices. Strangely enough, one of the people who work at Embark Studios went on to the Meet the Makers podcast and was fed a fake question. This is a very strange set of circumstances here. But the person asking the question said, "Who did the voiceovers? They sound really authentic." And the person from the studio said, "So here's the kicker. What did the voiceovers?" Which confirms, of course, that AI was used to work on the voice. And later on, he said, instead of investing months of work, instead of investing months of work, we only invested hours. We are consistently banging out rush order sessions like this within a day or two. You can literally get a pro grade VO for less than $1,000 total. Bang out a couple of recording sessions, and bam, you have all the audio you could ever desire. With AI voices, we have cut down the time, and especially for the closed beta. So yeah, it's one of those things that's like, why not just hire someone to do some voiceovers for the game? Like, these voice lines aren't that original that, you're not going to find someone to be able to do them. And these AI text-to-speech vocalizations are just a symptom of the larger problem at hand, which is the overuse of AI right now in popular media. Of course, AI can be a great tool. It can be a wonderful tool. Doug, a creator on YouTube and Twitch, uses AI beautifully. He makes fun content based on AI. You know, he programs the AI and has them talk and stuff like that. It's very unique. It's very fun. On the other hand, here you have things like AI restoration and stuff like that for something like the Beatles' new song, which just came out, where they used AI to separate John Lennon's vocals from the piano that he was playing, and it allowed them to release this final Beatles song. There's other things that AI can do, like photo restoration and stuff like that. That is good, and AI can fill in the blanks at times. But the thing that AI is being used for more and more commonly is a shortcut, and those shortcuts are not perfect at all. Listening to the voices of these AI robots speaking, do they sound real sometimes? Sure, but they sound fake most of the time. And this kind of AI technology is just, it's quick and cheap. Studios are using it now in instances like this to just, you know, lessen their development time and I don't know, maybe not spend as much money on professional voice actors who will be more than capable of doing anything that you need them to do. Right now, they're only hiring voice actors to do the grunts and stuff that AI cannot do. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, yeah, weird circumstances here. Odd interview that was given, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it just doesn't sound good, and hopefully they will turn this around, especially because a lot of people are talking about it right now, and a lot of people are, you know, saying, yeah, you know, if you got AI voices in this thing, who cares? And I'm one of those people. I mean, I didn't even try the beta. I'm sure it's a completely competent first person shooter, but it's just probably just it's not going to be something I'm going to be interested in general. So there you go. Let's move on to something a bit more positive. The Last of Us Season 2 is going to start filming early next year, in early 2024. This comes after the different strikes that delayed the project. Variety noted that the second season will not appear on HBO's slate for this year. So it'll be coming next year. So we probably won't be seeing the show appear on HBO Max until 2025, seeing as it hasn't even started filming yet. So there you go. In an interview with some of the producers, Neil Druckmann, he said that some of the stuff that they're most excited for in part 2 are the changes that we've discussed, and seeing the story come to life again is our other vision. I think it's exciting because it leans into those feelings you had from the game very heavily in a new way. He also stated that the second season part 2 is going to be set in 2 different seasons. So instead of it being 1 season for the first game, it's going to be 2 seasons for the second game, which I might have already mentioned in a prior podcast episode. I just don't remember. Yeah, right now, because of the strikes that happened, Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, who are the ones who are writing for the script right now, which I'm sure will be fine. But after the strike is over here, hopefully some writers come in and tweak some stuff, because the first season was really well written, and of course it was Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin doing most of the work, but you have other people in there to weigh in on things, and that's what really tidies things up. So we'll see how it all comes around in 2025, and yeah, I can't wait. All right, Spider-Man 2's director, who is also working on the Wolverine game, said that the games are set in the same universe. So Wolverine, the game, is going to take place in 1048, which is the particular iteration of the Marvel Universe that Spider-Man 2 encapsulates. So they will exist in the same continuity. Of course, when asked why Wolverine didn't appear in Spider-Man 2, he said that there was a decision not to do it because they wanted to let the team working on Spider-Man 2 cook. Let them cook. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to see Wolverine in Spider-Man 2. I mean, I don't need to see the Avengers or Fantastic Four or whoever else in in Spider-Man 2 either. I mean, I understand the point, like, hey, why wouldn't the Avengers come around for this crazy event happening in New York. Why wouldn't Fantastic Four or Wolverine know about it? Why wouldn't Doctor Strange do something? He's in New York, right? So yeah, it's one of those things like, okay, we get you kind of understand the criticism, but at the same time, it's like it's a Spider-Man game. There's been plenty of Spider-Man games in the past. Some of them do use other characters like Daredevil and Wolverine and Venom, but most of them are just they're based around Spider-Man. Of course, the citywide catastrophe that happens in Spider-Man 2 is pretty big. You do wonder why the Avengers wouldn't come in or someone else wouldn't come in to help, right? But you do understand it's a video game. It's it's a video game, and that's it. That's it. It's a video game, and they focus on the two characters in the game, which is fine by my standards. But I understand where people are coming from. But anyway, it's cool that the two universes are going to be in the same. I'm sorry, the two games are going to be in the same universe. So maybe Spider-Man or Peter or Miles will appear in Wolverine. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of Marvel, there was a canceled Daredevil game that was going to come out on the PS2 called The Man Without Fear. Prototype version of the game was leaked online, which shows some janky fighting between Daredevil and Kingpin and a bunch of other goons as well. Obviously, with Daredevil being blind, you would think that the game would be completely black with his echolocation senses. No, it's you just watch Daredevil punch people. The blindness doesn't really affect him in the little stuff that we got. It's a very basic third person brawler. It seems probably some combos in there and whatnot. But for in terms of like a Daredevil game that has some grappling ability and some whatever. I don't know. You kind of understand why it was canceled. It doesn't seem to be very I don't know, very very much of anything. And of course, this is a prototype, so how much can you really really criticize it? But at this point, I would like to see a newer Daredevil type game. I was predicting that maybe Daredevil would show up in Spider-Man 2, or maybe someone's DLC, or maybe even just Matt Murdock in general. And they did re-add the sign in for Murdock, Matt Murdock in the game. So yeah, whatever. Allegedly, this was going to come to PlayStation 2, coming from I'm not sure who it was coming from, but it was going to be based on the Frank Miller comic run of the same name. And Sony made allegedly recommendations from Sony steered the project too far away from the original concept, and the developer had sold the licenser on, so it was canceled. So there you go. That's that. If you want to see the gameplay, Hidden Palace on YouTube has the exclusive gameplay. Omega Strikers, which came out earlier this year for free on Switch, PC, etc., ending its development just months after its launch. In a video on the Omega Strikers YouTube channel, the developers of the game said that the development cycle for the game was coming to a close. Of course, they're still going to do some balancing here and there as they work on the new project. But they said that they are going to be halting any further development on the game, which means there's probably not going to be any more characters or maps or anything like that showing up. They said that there will still be online. The online will still be available, and there will still be balance updates, as I already said, but there will be no new releases for the foreseeable future for the game. So that's about it for that. The game was fun, but kind of like with what that one guy from Bungie said about the Last of Us multiplayer game, it just didn't have longevity to it. It was just a very basic game where you hit a ball into a net, essentially. And I didn't see it going very far. I played a little bit of it, but it wasn't enough for me to even talk about it on the podcast. So, take that with what you will. And finally, for the news today, Twitch is ending support for its Switch app early next year. On the 31st of January 2024, they will be ending support for the Twitch app, meaning that you won't be able to log in and view people's live streams anymore, chat, and etc. As of tomorrow, or as of the day I'm recording this, tomorrow on November 6th, new users will not be able to download the Twitch app from Nintendo Switch eShop. This will, of course, then follow later on the 31st of January, people losing the ability to log in completely. In a statement, the Twitch said, "We recently made the difficult decision to remove the Twitch app from Nintendo Switch. Nintendo remains a valued partner, and we appreciate all the support the Switch community has provided to Twitch and our streamers." So yeah, the Twitch app was originally launched in November of 2021. It allowed viewers to watch live streams, esports, IRL broadcasts, and stuff like that. But the website, but the app was not as good as the website or the phone. Some complaints that people had was the fact that you couldn't chat while watching a stream. You could the only options were to pause or hide the UI and close the stream. So. Yeah, I don't know how many people. I don't know many people who watch Twitch on Switch, but that's ending. That's ending right now. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the final part of the show, which is what's coming soon. Okay, the fan-made Bloodborne cart is going to hit the streets of Yharnam in January. The same person who did the Bloodborne demake, which was very highly received. I really enjoyed it when I played it. They have been working on Bloodborne cart for quite some time. I've been following their development process on Twitter and places like that for quite some time. And yeah, it's nice to see that the game is officially going to be given a release date of the 31st of January 2024, the same day that Twitch stops working on the Switch completely. So the person working on this is Lilith Walther. She has been working on it for quite some time, pretty much right after releasing Bloodborne Demastered, or whatever it's called, Demake, PSX version. So yeah, this Bloodborne cart is in the same graphical style as the Bloodborne PSX version, PS1 version. There's several characters. There's 12 characters to choose from. 16 maps to play on. There's going to be a full single-player campaign mode with some boss fights, local split-screen multiplayer, and a versus battle mode. And, of course, this is all going to be released on itch.io. So if you want to download it, it'll be available there. The fan-made projects usually get shut down pretty quickly, but Bloodborne... The PSX version of Bloodborne never got shut down, and I'm wondering if it's because she never released it on like a big platform like itch.io or GOG or something like that. So with this iteration coming out on an actual platform, and she might possibly be making some money off of it, you kind of worry that that it will be taken down. Now, of course, talking to Kotaku, she said the nervousness over the project getting taken down is always present, but there isn't anything I can do about it except hope that it doesn't happen. If it happens, it happens. Hopefully Sony and From Software are smart enough to realize, like, hey, this is pretty cool. We should probably not take this down. But as, of course, with other projects in the past, we'll have to wait and see. But pretty cool. That's coming January 31st, if you want to check that out. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 early campaign access is available right now. The only thing I want to talk about right now for the game is the fact that the PS5 version of the game does not have a Platinum Trophy. It is only listed as a DLC for Modern Warfare 2. The PS4 version has a standalone list with a Platinum Trophy, which is very strange. This is a AAA game, $70, and it's not going to have its own trophy list. Even things like... of course, other things like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, all the games have individual trophy lists. The Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, all of it also have Platinum trophies, separate lists for each of their games. So why is it that this game, Modern Warfare 3, doesn't have a standalone trophy list apart from Modern Warfare 2 on PS5? It doesn't make much sense, which just further it reiterates the point that this really is like a big DLC for Modern Warfare 2. Here is my hypothesis, and of course this is only my opinion, so, don't sue me. But it's my hypothesis, it's my theory, it is my theory that allegedly this Modern Warfare 3 was going to be released in a couple years, but because of the Microsoft acquisition, They fast-tracked it because it was probably pretty close to being completed anyway. They fast-tracked it, seeing as it's pretty much an asset flip at its core. They added on all of the remastered maps instead of releasing it as a DLC for Modern Warfare 2. They put it into Modern Warfare 3 as the base map set, and the zombies mode was probably also going to be either a DLC for Modern Warfare 2 or was going to be more fleshed out for Modern Warfare 3. I'm not saying, I haven't played the game yet, so I don't know how deep the zombies mode is per se. But if I do play it and realize like, oh, this is very bare bones, that would kind of speak to me and tell me, oh, they probably were going to flesh this out a lot more in a full Modern Warfare 3 release. All those things considered, it really is a bit fishy. I feel like Activision and the CEO right now is just trying to push something out the door to make a little bit of that last minute cash to put into his pocket, and then once Xbox takes over, who cares? He doesn't care. That is my theory, and I'm sticking to it, that the Activision Blizzard CEO, is pushing this big Modern Warfare 3 DLC out without it being fully finished or fully, whatever, because he doesn't want to wait for the Black Ops game to be finished or the next Sledgehammer games to be finished. And because Modern Warfare 2 sold so well, and people are in such high graces with the Modern Warfare rebooted series as of right now, they just want to make as much money as they can, so they're pushing Modern Warfare 3 out as a big DLC. Even though it's technically a standalone release, it's all maps from Modern Warfare 2. It's a continuation of the Modern Warfare 2 story, and it's adding this new zombies mode on top of it. Seems like a beefy DLC to me. And the fact that they don't have it doesn't have its own trophy list on PS5 is very unsettling, I would say. Also, another weird thing is that Modern Warfare 3 on Steam, if you look on PlayStation or Xbox, it's just labeled as Call of Duty. What's up with that? Just some things to think about. I was overly negative on Modern Warfare 2 before it came out, but it ended up being one of my favorite games of the year that came out last year. I'm hoping that this game does the same thing, but I'm not holding my breath. Modern Warfare 2019 is great. Modern Warfare 2 from last year is good and borderline great. We'll see how Modern Warfare 3 fares compared to the other two games in the same series. Let's move on. Dead Island 2. I've been talking about the new DLC for a little while now. It's officially been released. You can now play the House DLC. If you want to buy it separately, not a part of the expansion pass, it's about $12.99. If you get the expansion pass, you can buy both of the DLCs for $30. The story setup for the cult-themed House DLC is a secret billionaire's techno-death cult fights for survival amidst a zombie apocalypse. The cult are paragons of a new future shown to them by their enigmatic leader and prophet, Constantin. Explore their sinister and debaucherous world as you navigate the cult's twisted ideology. New weapons you'll find are the K. Ross bow, the Hog Roaster, and Dead Islands. You also customized your build with 8 new skill cards. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool. I have not purchased this yet. I actually don't know if I will. I do want to play it, obviously. But I might play it when the DLC comes out or whatever. I still have the game downloaded on my console, so it's not like I can't just pick it up and play it. But maybe I'll ping Greedy Waffles about it in the Discord and see if he wants to play that sometime. Speaking of DLC, Lies of P. It's been announced that there's going to be DLC for the game. It just came out a couple months ago, but they're already concepting in showing artwork for what the protagonists will be doing in the next DLC and possibly even the next game. They're already talking about a new game. So one of the concept artworks that they showed off was like a ship, and Pinocchio's walking across a ship into another ship. And there's another little piece of artwork that shows like some sort of maybe power generator or something like that. And Pinocchio is kind of interacting with it. So Yeah, I don't know why I put this into the coming soon, seeing as the DLC is just being started to be worked on. So ignore that slip of the mind there. Speaking of more DLC, the first Remnant 2 DLC called The Awakened King, it will be out on the 14th of November. There will be a new story, a new class, and of course new bosses and enemies to go along with it. This will launch for about $9.99. If you got the Ultimate Edition, that you get the DLC along with it, along with the other two DLC launching next year. In a press release, they said, in a brand new storyline, survivors must uncover the secrets behind the one true king by exploring a mysterious new area within the world of Losten. In this strange new location, survivors will traverse new dungeons, acquire powerful equipment, meet unexpected allies, and face new threats in their adventure to reach the one true king and defeat him once and for all. So yeah, like I said, there'll be a new archetype, which probably will be revealed closer to the release date. There's also a guy called the Ritualist, who is described as a master of pain and suffering, who will utilize status effects. So yeah, kind of interesting idea there. I don't know if I'm going to be playing this, seeing as I really didn't enjoy the base game, but there you go. There's a new character coming to Overwatch 2, a new tank hero called Mauga, who kind of reminds me of Maui from that Disney movie, Moana. So, as a part of the BlizzCon 2023 celebrations, the class-based free-to-play shooter Overwatch 2 unveiled a brand new hero called Mauga, who is a tank hero. He'll be available in a limited-time trial the weekend before his release in Season 8. He was first introduced 4 years ago in a short story. We finally have our first Samoan hero. Mauga is his name, and it means mountain in Samoan. He portrays himself as a big, loud brute. However, this is just a facade. He's a cunning technician, always one step ahead of his enemies. Even his tattoo was made by an amazing Samoan artist. So he's equipped with 2 chain guns that can unleash Cardiac Overdrive, an ability to damage enemies and gain life at the same time. You can test the character between the 3rd and 5th of November. His official release will be in Season 8 on the 5th of December. So there you go. Also, more expansion and DLC news. Diablo 4. It has the Vessel of Hatred DLC has been announced to be coming late 2024, which is quite a while away. I mean, holy shit, late 2024. That's like sometime October, November of next year. But essentially, this will continue the dark tale that began in the main game, bringing back players to learn about the fate of the prime evil Mephisto and his demonic plans for Sanctuary. Players will have to travel through lush jungles known as the Torajan, which is a fan favorite location from Diablo 2, apparently, and experience a class never before seen in the Diablo universe. More details will be shared next summer. So yeah, if you want to check that out, that'll be coming next year. So there you go. Get excited, get hyped. Are you hyped? It's next year, at the end of next year. There's already a new Sonic game coming out. This one called Sonic Dream Team, but there's a catch. This will be exclusive to the Apple Arcade. This is a phone game, folks, but for a phone game, doesn't look too bad, honestly. You can play as one of like 6 or 7 characters, including Sonic, Rogue, Tails, Amy, Knuckles, the bunny rabbit. I don't know her name. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be like a 3D platforming adventure almost, which is a little bit different from the other games that have come out recently. It'll be available on the Apple Arcade on December 5th, 2023. Sonic and friends will race across 12 levels and 4 different worlds to stop Dr. Eggman's bizarre dreams from coming true. So Cream the Rabbit is that character's name. They'll be making a return as playable characters. So Apple Arcade exclusives have been released on other platforms before, like Sonic Stadium, Sonic Racing, and Choo Choo Rocket Universe, which has been taken down. So we'll see if the Sonic game comes over to other platforms eventually. But if you don't have an Apple device and you love Sonic, sorry. All right, the next wave of Mario Kart 8 courses has been announced and shown off. This will be coming on November 9th, so I'll probably be talking about this next week. This is the biggest release yet, folks. We got DK Mountain, my favorite map, pretty much in any Mario Kart game ever. Okay, that's coming back. Amazing. Love that. Rainbow Road from Mario Kart Wii, a fan favorite, finally making its way onto Mario Kart 8. Also, other courses like Madrid Drive, Piranha Plant Cove, and Rome Avanti from Mario Kart Tour are making an appearance, of course. Bowser Castle 3 from Super Mario Kart and Rosalina's Ice World from Mario Kart 7 are all making an appearance. Of course, there's many courses that are not making its way over to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, possibly saving more remastered or remade courses for the next game, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. Don't forget that Diddy Kong, Funky Kong, Pauline, and Peachette are all going to be included in the new release for the DLC as well. So, yeah, this is a pretty good set of courses here. We shall see if, if more... I'm sorry, we shall see how they are. I'm going to play them and see how they are. And then maybe eventually down the road, I will rank all the DLC courses. Maybe. That's going to be a tall task, though, because I don't really keep a list of the ordering of my courses. I would have to go back and re-listen to my talks about the courses in the past. So we'll see. We'll see. Also, there's going to be 17 new Mii racing suits and a jukebox option as well included in this part of the DLC as well. Pretty cool stuff. So I think people are going to be pretty happy with this course selection. But yeah, like I said, we'll see how it is when we get to it. Oh, I forgot to mention Daisy's Circuit is also going to be included as well. I apologize. Which I think they showed off Daisy Circuit from the last trailer anyways, but Daisy Circuit is coming to this one as well. So there you go. Here are some new games coming to the Nintendo Switch's online expansion service. So we got some Japan exclusives here, as well as one Game Boy game. So we got the mysterious Murasame Castle, which came out in 1986. Devil World, which came out in 1984. And Castlevania Legends, which came out in 1998. The mysterious Murasame Castle was for the NES, was never localized. And then the previously re-released 3DS Virtual Console game Devil World is a Shigeru Miyamoto first console exclusive, which was the first time the title ever received a local, this is the first time it's getting a localization in North America. So there you go. Castlevania Legends, Storm Dracula's Castle, and Enter the Heart of Evil is action-adventure game released for the Game Boy system in 1998. Pretty straightforward. If you like Castlevania, I don't know if this one's been released in other forms before, but pretty cool. It's going to be a part of this new collection. So there you go. 3 new games to grace your Switches. Here are the new games for the PlayStation Plus Essential tier for November 2023. We get Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, Aliens Fireteam Elite, and Dragon Ball The Breakers. Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, never played this one, but I think it looks good. I mean, I thought the first Definitive Edition Mafia game looked good, but I didn't end up liking that. But we'll see about Mafia 2. Aliens Fireteam Elite, a pretty good 4-player co-op game where you face tons of aliens. It's not bad, but I don't know. It's not great. I'm sorry. It's a 3-player co-op game. And then Dragon Ball: The Breakers. I'm not sure what this one is. It's probably a fighting game if it's Dragon Ball. I'm not sure what it is. I never played this one. But yeah, I mean those will be available on the first Tuesday of November, which will be the 7th. So if you want to check those out, they'll be available soon. Here are some games coming to Xbox Game Pass in November. Between the 2nd and 14th, we have Played Up, which is the console version for the game, on November 2nd, which is already available, along with Thirsty Suitors on console, PC, and cloud. On November 6th, you can play Football Manager 2024. November 7th, you can play RoboQuest 1.0. On November 9th, you can play Dungeons 4 and Like a Dragon Gaiden on the console, PC, and cloud, along with Wild Hearts on EA Play. On November 13th, you can play Spirita, and on November 14th, you can play Coral Island. If you want to check out any of those games coming out soon. And then here are 7 games that are leaving Xbox Game Pass on November 15th. This includes Coffee Talk, Exapunks. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm getting burpy. I apologize. Coffee Talks, Exapunks, Ghost Song, Gungrave Gore, Football Manager 2023, Lappin, and Town Scraper. The only game that I like from this list is Town Scraper. But you know, whatever. If you want to check out any of those games, they will be leaving soon. All right, folks. Let's go ahead and move on to the final part of the show. Everyone's favorite part. Guess that song. No one got last week's song, which was the main title theme from Limbo, the final Halloween song for the month. But we'll be moving back into more of a variety now. So let's go ahead and hear what this week's song is now. If you know what that song's name is and the game that it came from, please go to the Discord and type it in the Ferret64 chat, and I will give you a super reaction. Or if you want to type it into the comments of YouTube down below, I'll give you a heart and a hearty congratulations. Thank you, everyone who listens to the podcast. I do appreciate that. If you want to check me out on any other platforms, it's all at Yemmy the Ferret, whether it be Twitch, YouTube, not Spotify, Twitter, or Instagram. Right now, we are playing through, or we're going to start playing through Hulk Ultimate Destruction on stream, which is a PS2 and GameCube game that I played back in the day when I was a kid. So we'll see how that is in the present day and age of 2023. I also have a VODs channel where you can check out all past streams and shorts that I do. That's Yemmy the Ferret VODs. And other than that, I appreciate y'all swinging by and listening. If you want to check out the other podcast I do, it's Film Freaks with a Z at the end. We recently talked about The Host from 2006, directed by Bong Joon-ho. The next movie we're going to be talking about is Onward. So if you want to check out the latest episode, which is The Host, that's available now on the YouTube channel or podcast platforms. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I am Yemmy the Ferret, and I'll talk at you next week. Bye-bye. The Ferret64 podcast is owned and edited by Yemmy the Ferret. The song Nightshade, used in the intro and outro, is owned by Adhesive Wombat. Small sound clips during the podcast were made by Yemmy the Ferret. News sources include NintendoLife.com, PushSquare.com, and PureXbox.com. All opinions video game related are my own. Thank you for listening.